What if everything you've ever believed about death was just a shadow of a much deeper reality? What if I told you that hidden within the ancient records lies a secret so staggering that it challenges everything modern people assume about what it means to live and what it means to truly never die? Imagine a man so utterly consumed by divine purpose that the very laws of mortality bent around his footsteps. In a time when darkness flooded the earth and corruption became the norm, there emerged a singular figure who refused to bow to compromise. His name was Enoch. But you probably never heard the real story, the raw, unsettling truth no one ever dares to tell you. This is not just a tale of a man who vanished. This is the hidden warning, the shocking invitation, and the unshakable hope that your soul has been secretly aching to uncover. Because what if Enoch's story is not some dusty legend, but a living mirror held up to your own life, daring you to ask, are you walking with God or just walking in circles? Pause for a moment and look around you. Does it ever feel like this world is suffocating under the weight of its own distractions? You wake up and scroll through endless feeds, watching others perform their curated lives. You push yourself to achieve, to own, to be applauded. Yet somewhere behind your ambition lurks a quiet emptiness you can't silence. And in your most honest moments, maybe you wonder, is this all there is? Or was I made for something infinitely higher, infinitely more alive? Thousands of years ago, before cities rose and fell, before empires carved their names into stone, there was a man whose life exposed this very dilemma. Enoch was not a priest in robes or a ruler in palaces. He was an ordinary person living in extraordinary times, an era where wickedness was not the exception, but the cultural air everyone breathed. Genesis 5:24 whispers a single line so mysterious, it almost feels like a riddle. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. But what does that actually mean? Is it possible to live in such relentless communion with the Creator that death itself becomes irrelevant? Could Enoch's walk be more than a miracle? Could it be a map, a roadmap for restless souls, searching for purpose, for destiny, for a love that no failure can destroy? This story is not about escaping mortality in some mystical way. It's about discovering the one thing every generation has ignored, that you were designed to live in unbroken fellowship with the one who made you. And maybe, just maybe, your hunger, your ache, your unexplainable longing for more is the same holy invitation that once stirred Enoch to step beyond the ordinary into the impossible. So let me ask you, what would happen if you stopped treating faith as a Sunday ritual or a desperate crutch and started seeing it as your ultimate calling? What if your destiny was not to merely survive, but to walk so closely with God that every step of your life became a testimony, a defiant declaration that darkness cannot win? In a time when the sons of Cain were building monuments to their own pride and calling it progress, Enoch quietly built something far more indestructible, a relationship so pure, so consuming, that God refused to let death interrupt it. When was the last time you looked at your own existence and wondered, is this really all I was created for? You were not born to drift through days, numbing your heart with entertainment, or to be shackled by the expectations of a culture that worships success and convenience. You were born for fellowship, for communion, for something that the richest empires cannot fabricate. And the life of Enoch stands as a daring question to each of us. If God searched the earth today, would he find anyone whose devotion burns bright enough to break through the darkness? Or would he find us too busy, too self-absorbed, too skeptical to even notice his invitation? This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming willing. Willing to let go of the illusions you clutch and step into a faith that is real, raw, and alive. The kind of faith that cannot be satisfied by mere beliefs but demands an actual relationship. A faith that transforms every ordinary day into sacred ground. A faith that makes your life so fragrant with God's presence that even death loses its power. So before you look away, ask yourself the one question that could change everything. What if Enoch's story was never meant to impress you but to awaken you? You didn't see it, but every generation before you carried a hidden question in the marrow of their bones. How close can a human truly get to God? In Enoch's time, the world was unraveling. Corruption spread like an invisible plague, infecting hearts, twisting desires, forging a culture where might was worshipped and holiness was mocked. Cities were rising loud, gleaming testimonies to human ingenuity, and the descendants of Cain strutted through avenues of innovation, as if their cleverness exempted them from accountability. They mastered metallurgy, composed music so beautiful it seduced the soul, domesticated livestock, until their wealth multiplied beyond counting. But in the midst of all this progress, an emptiness yawned. It was the same emptiness that whispers beneath every triumph built on pride. Yet while the masses gloried in their own brilliance, a different hunger was growing inside Enoch. He began to sense that the human story was not about what you could build, conquer, or acquire. It was about whom you walked with. Imagine a young man stepping out into the pre-dawn hush, his breath curling into the sky as he whispered questions that no one around him dared to ask. Is there more to life than survival? Is there a holiness so real that it can swallow the darkness inside me? He found no satisfying answers among the noisy builders of civilization. So he turned his questions heavenward. And that turning so small, so unnoticed by his peers, marked the genesis of a revolution in the unseen realm. Then this happened. What began as a quiet longing became an unstoppable pursuit. Enoch discovered that holiness is not inherited by bloodline or conferred by rituals. It is birthed in 1,000 secret decisions to choose God over self. While others traded integrity for influence, he traded comfort for communion. While his neighbors amassed treasures that would decay, he gathered revelations that would outlast every empire. Here's what was hidden when Enoch chose to walk with God. He was not merely finding solace, he was stepping into a cosmic drama that stretches across eternity. Every dawn he rose to pray was a declaration of war against the darkness. Every time he paused in his work to thank his Creator, it was an act of rebellion against the tyranny of pride. And every time he refused the seductive call of compromise, he was forging an unseen path, a path that would one day become a prophecy to generations unborn. Let me tell you a story, one you may have never heard, though its echoes are hidden in plain sight. Picture Enoch as a father holding his newborn son Methuselah. As he looked into those innocent eyes, he felt a weight settle over his spirit, a gravity that no earthly joy could cancel. For God had whispered something unspeakable. When this child dies, judgment will come. Imagine living with that knowledge. Every time Enoch called his son's name, he was speaking prophecy. Every laugh, every milestone, every birthday became a countdown to the day when humanity's rebellion would meet its reckoning. But do not imagine that this knowledge crushed Enoch. Instead, it fueled him with a purpose so fierce that no mockery could extinguish it. He understood that God's warnings are not threats, but invitations, urgent calls to return before it is too late. In the decades that followed, Enoch became known as a man set apart. When he passed through villages, people hushed their conversations, their eyes searching for some trace of the supernatural they suspected clung to him. Children whispered that he spoke to God face to face. Elders nodded in quiet agreement. Even skeptics found themselves unnerved by the peace that radiated from his presence. And still Enoch walked. Through the changing seasons, through the decades that piled like fallen leaves, he kept walking. He walked past the noise of culture and the lures of ambition. He walked beyond the horizons of conventional wisdom. Each step became a sermon, each dawn a fresh covenant. He did not walk to earn God's favor. He walked because he already had it, and because that favor tasted sweeter than any earthly reward. His was a life of hidden victories, victories that no chronicler inscribed in stone, but which thundered in the courts of heaven. The world measured greatness by monuments and conquests, but in God's ledger, greatness was measured by surrender, and Enoch had surrendered everything. And then came the moment that no one saw coming, the moment that shattered every assumption about what it means to be human. One ordinary day as dawn spilled over the horizon, Enoch rose for his usual walk. Perhaps he paused by an ancient tree, its roots gnarled with centuries of silent witness. Perhaps he lifted his face to the sky where the first light was dissolving the night. In that instant, the thin veil between worlds simply tore. He did not collapse in death. He did not fade into legend. He simply was not, for God took him. What you thought was a cursed death as the final word was actually your calling to walk so closely with your Maker that the grave itself must stand aside. Enoch's story is not a quaint myth. It is a living indictment of our half-hearted faith. It is a holy dare that you too could know God so intimately that your life becomes a blazing testimony of what is possible when love casts out fear. The generations that came after searched for his body, but there was none. They scoured the valleys and caves, desperate for evidence that he had simply wandered away. But there was nothing to find because Enoch had not wandered, he had arrived. He stepped into the embrace of the one he had spent 3 centuries pursuing. His translation was God's declaration to the universe. This is what pleases me, a heart undivided, a faith unshakable, a love unconquered. And it is here at the collision of longing and fulfillment that we see the hidden truth we spend our lives trying to avoid. You were never created to merely exist. You were made to walk with God until your steps outgrow this world. So pause and let this question pierce you. If Enoch's story happened once, why not again? Why not now? Why not in your life? What if the same invitation has been extended to you? An invitation to abandon the shallow waters of religious routine and plunge into the depths of holy intimacy? What if your greatest fear that surrender would cost you? Everything is the very threshold to a joy so profound it makes death irrelevant. Look closely at Enoch's life, and you will see the contours of your own destiny waiting to be awakened. You will see the map that was always hidden in plain sight, a path paved not with achievements but with surrender, a journey measured not by years but by intimacy, a destination where mortality dissolves in the brightness of God's presence. This is the truth no one ever told you, that the purpose of life is not to master the world, but to walk so faithfully with the one who made it that the world itself loses its hold on you. And that just like Enoch, you too were meant to become a living prophecy. So what do you do with a story like Enoch's? It is not enough to admire it from a safe distance or to file it away under ancient curiosities. His life confronts you with an invitation that is impossible to ignore once you've glimpsed it. The lesson is painfully clear. Walking with God is not a metaphor or a pious slogan. It is a choice. 1,000 choices woven into the hidden hours of your days to either drift along with culture or to step into the blazing nearness of your Creator. If you long to live beyond the shallows, here is where you begin. First, cultivate holy attentiveness. Enoch did not become God's intimate friend by accident. He trained his heart to recognize God's whispers even amid the noise of a collapsing civilization. You must decide that knowing God personally matters more than being liked, more than being comfortable, more than appearing successful. Second, live as if your life is a prophetic message, because it is. Enoch's very existence, the naming of his son, the uncompromising warnings he carried, everything about him shouted a single truth: God will not be mocked, and he will not abandon those who walk with him. What would it look like if you began to see your own daily decisions as declarations about God's character? Would you still compromise so easily if you knew your integrity was part of someone else's deliverance story? Third practice, joyful surrender. Enoch's devotion did not spring from grim obligation, but from a love so fierce it eclipsed every other attachment. If your faith feels like a burden, perhaps it is because you are trying to carry it in your own strength. Surrender is not weakness. It is the only way to be filled with a strength that never fails. Fourth, anchor your hope beyond this life. Enoch walked with God until the veil between worlds grew thin and disappeared. You may never experience a translation like his, but you can live in the same certainty that death is not the end. That every act of faith, every unseen sacrifice, every prayer whispered in the dark will echo in eternity. And finally, dare to believe that you too are called to intimacy, not merely to survival. The promise of Enoch's story is not that he was an exception, but that he was a forerunner, a living preview of what is possible for every person willing to walk away from lesser loves. So if you have been living numb, if your heart has been dulled by compromise or cynicism, this is your moment to return. Return to the one who formed you. Return to the one whose love cannot be measured or exhausted. Return to the walk you were born for. If this message is for you, stop scrolling. Start praying. Let the distractions fall away for just a moment and listen. You have been pursued by a love that does not tire. You have been called by a voice that still speaks through the centuries, the same voice that once beckoned Enoch out of the ordinary and into the extraordinary. This is not the time to pretend you are fine, not the time to polish your image or rehearse excuses. This is the time to answer, because there is a God who still longs to walk with you, to share his secrets with you, to turn your ordinary days into sacred appointments. You were never created to simply exist. You are crafted to know him, to walk with him in a fellowship so profound that even death itself must yield. Do not waste another year numbing the ache inside you. Do not settle for a life that is safe but hollow. What Enoch discovered is still waiting for you: the wonder of being fully known and fully loved, the peace that cannot be stolen by circumstance, the courage that grows when you realize you are never alone. So here's your invitation. Tear down the walls you've built around your heart. Lay aside the burdens you were never meant to carry. Step out of the shadows of doubt and into the light of his presence. Today can be the day you begin your own walk, a walk that will ripple through generations and echo in eternity. If you hear this call, do not harden your heart. Do not postpone surrender for a more convenient season, because the same God who walked with Enoch is here now, extending his hand to you. And if you will dare to take it, you will find that every step becomes a miracle, every moment a testimony, every breath a holy offering. This is your moment. Will you walk away unchanged, or will you rise and walk with God?